Vikings needed to win in Denver and hope Washington lost to the Cowboys to get in the playoffs. It didn't matter anyway because the Redskins beat the Cowboys, and on top of it, the Vikings lost to the Broncos. So everything they didn't need happened, and they lose 22-19 in overtime. Hey, how are you, folks? Jason Horowitz, NFL.com's Pat Kirwan, CBS Sports' Charley Casserly. Glad to be with you here in the last week of the regular season. And you look at this team 2 weeks ago, they had won 5 straight, the Minnesota Vikings. They were 8-6. They lose last week to Washington. They needed help today. But, Charlie, you said to me earlier in the day, this wasn't a playoff team anyway. Aside from the fact that the record wasn't good enough to make in the playoffs, why, when you look at this team, were they not a playoff team?
I think it comes down to the quarterback position. I don't think they're good enough at the quarterback position to be considered a playoff team, because when you go into the playoffs, usually you've got to at least have a quarterback that's good enough to win the game by himself, or certainly with a good supporting cast. I think for Minnesota to go 8-8 is a tremendous accomplishment. Usually when your record improves to 8-8, you think you have momentum going into the next year, you're going to be a better football team. I'm not so sure that's the case, because I think you still have the same question today at quarterback that you did at the beginning of the season, and the same question you have at the wide receiver position. Neither one of those positions give you a lot of consistency. It showed up today, and that's why they lost the game, because they didn't have consistency at those positions.
And Sidney Rice did not play in this game as well, the guy that started to emerge at the end of this season. But, Pat, you've been saying all year long, as we've been previewing and recapping this team, that Minnesota and Brad Childress were going to stick and find out what they had with Tarvaris Jackson.
He made a promise.
But Charlie said it. He doesn't think they have it.
No, when you look at Tarvaris, you're not at all comfortable with what the prospects for 2008 are at this time. But Brad did tell us in the very beginning of the season, come hell or high water, I'm going to play this kid through every situation. And I'm sure there were times today he was tempted to bring a veteran in there and Kelly Holcomb, anybody, and see if the guy could settle it down. As the game wore on, what do we have? We have an athlete who can run around. He made some plays with his feet. And he made two-point plays. But I really think in the quarterback situation, you put a quality quarterback on this football team, not that I could find one for you, with that run defense and that running game, and Sidney Rice. I think Sidney is the one receiver I have a lot of faith in. Wade was an interesting guy that came through today. But in general, the receivers, a lot of drop passes early when the quarterback needed a little help.
Yeah, you talked about Jackson. They were down 19-3 in the fourth. He brought him back, tied it up, and then fumbled in overtime, which set up the Denver game-winning field goal. Charlie, Adrian Peterson, last 3 weeks, and actually the last 4 weeks, if you include today, averaged about 35 yards per game in the last 4 weeks. We know about the injury beforehand. He came back. He was good. Last 4 weeks struggled. Is it a rookie wall he hit, or was it something else?
Yeah, I don't know if I would be able to say it's a rookie wall. It could be, but not being there, we can't. I think teams stacked the defenses, and they were able to stop him because of that. But when you watch him, you still see the flashes of greatness. So sometimes you hit a stretch where you don't gain as many yards. I think this is the least of their problems. I think next year the guy will come back, and if he was the only back there, he'd rush for 2,000 yards.
And Chester Taylor, he did have 83 yards on 10 carries in this game, so they still have a good situation at running back, obviously. All right, we covered Minnesota, what they need for next year to make the playoffs. Denver, a lot of people thought they could be a very good team in the AFC. It fizzled this year. We've talked about it with Jay Cutler. Right. He's the quarterback of that team. There's no doubt about that.
They got their quarterback answer.
What don't they have?
I think they're going to attack the defense and some offensive line spots. They've got some older players. They want this quarterback in Cutler to throw more from the pocket. A little different than the Jake Plummer era. So their tackles have to be more traditional pass blockers. They struggled in those situations. But I think their real concerns will be on defense. They got 2 matchup corners, and they still can't get the run stopped enough to be comfortable that they could be back in a championship run. So you'll see changes in the defensive line.
Charlie, as a former GM, is that one of the easier things to fix immediately, if you the defensive front seven?
I don't know if there's anything that's ever easy to fix. No, I think it's a problem to fix. It's hard to find defensive linemen. That's the single toughest position as a group. I think it is.
More so than a quarterback?
Well, as a group, you got to find 4 of them. Okay, you only got to find 1 quarterback. Quarterback is the hardest one. Okay, but the problem with Denver is they've been trying to fix this. It seems like forever, and I don't. They got to hope. You got to have right now. You got to have some hope. See, and your hope is you drafted 3 young defensive linemen last year. Okay, Moss, Crowder, and the fellow, I'm escaping his name right now.
Dumerville a couple years ago.
But the fellow from Florida, the 4th round pick. Anyway, that's the thing. Jarvis Moss is the 1st round pick. But what they've got to do is hope they've got something to build on with those guys. Because if they don't have much else. Dumerville's a terrific pass rusher, But you know, at 5'11", he's not going to hold up in the running game.
We'll have Draft 101 once this season is over as well, to get the entire round 1 through 7 and all 200-plus players that we're taking. We'll get the entire board up here for the playoffs because it's escaping the rest of our names as well. So, Charlie, don't feel so bad on that one. Folks, for more on this game and what Denver needs to fix, what Minnesota needs to fix, and the playoffs, of course, which both these teams will not be in, be sure to stay with CBSSports.com and watch everything else on the CBS Audience Network. For Pat Kirwan and Charley Casserly, it's been a great season. We'll see you in the playoffs. Take care, folks.